This video simulation will show how to use the IMED consent application to document a telephone consent using a VA employee as the witness when the VA employee is not on hand to sign the IMED consent form. Audio recordings of this telephone consent will not be needed when the IMED consent application is completed correctly. To gain access to IMED, simply go to Tools, IMED Informed Consent, IMED Informed Consent. Make sure your clinical link is on, otherwise it will not give you permission to be able to gain access to IMED. You'll get an error. For training purposes, we're going to utilize the interventional specialty, and we're going to scroll down and we're going to look for venous access PICC line superior vena cava. You can utilize this method of searching for the consent, or you can enter a search phrase. If you know the first couple of characters of that consent name, simply type it into that box and click on OK. A series of specialties will appear. Here's the interventional radiology, and there it is. You can also right-click on that consent if you wish and add it to your favorites. So the next time you log into IMED Informed Consent, simply go to your favorites folder, choose the applicable specialty, and there it is. To gain access to this consent, simply double-click on that consent as highlighted above, or click on the Begin Consent button. In the verification box, we're going to click on No to Does the patient have decision-making capacity? This telephone consent can be used when the patient does not have decision-making capacity and you have called a surrogate decision maker. This window is situational. In this box, document that you have completed a clinical assessment of the patient's decision-making capacity. Next, we're going to click here if the consent is being obtained by telephone. This is critical to do. Make sure that you cover these 4 points during the telephone consent process. In addition, you must record the name of the VA employee witnessing the telephone consent. For training purposes, we're going to type in Paul Carmen. For the surrogate, we're going to type in Wilma Flintstone, who is the spouse of Fred Flintstone. We'll make believe that this patient is Fred Flintstone and Wilma is the spouse. Other relationships available as choices are healthcare agent named in advance directive, legal guardian, child over 18, parent, sibling, grandparent, grandchild, or close friend. Close friend requires a separate progress note documentation. Please see the Informed Consent Medical Center policy for specific requirements when using a close friend as a surrogate decision maker. Enter the anatomical location and site for the treatment procedure. We're going to say no to anesthesia. We'll say non-applicable for blood. This window is situational. We'll type in Tom Hartney as the practitioner and Joe Morris as the supervisor. When the reminders window appears, read it and then say OK. The consent is now ready to sign. Notice the document identifies the surrogate decision maker, and the VA employee witness to consent by telephone is recorded below. To sign this consent, simply click on the Sign button. We'll sign the name for the signing practitioner. Since I'm not Tom Hartney, I'm just going to put his initials here. TJH. Now we're going to click on Save. The VA witness to consent by telephone, Paul Carmen. If Paul Carmen was on site, he would utilize the electronic signature pad and he would sign the consent as such. If he's on the telephone or he's not on site, the VA employee is off site, will document that he or she witnessed the conversation in a progress note witness. And we'll talk about that when we get to the CPRS side of this video presentation. So we'll put a check mark in there and click on Save. Now we're ready to save this to the chart. All you do is click on the Save to Chart button. Right now this is going through the picture archiving communication system to the digital imaging communication system. A progress note is being created in CPRS right now as we speak. It's going to take about 60 or 90 seconds for that to happen, and that consent's going to go over to Vista Imaging as well, and you'll see a blue icon located to that electronically created note automatically. You don't have to sign it. It'll automatically be created by IMED. That's happening right now as we speak. I'm going to put this on pause. I don't want to burn up too many bytes, and we will resume in a couple of minutes. So let's do a file refresh and see if this note will appear. This automatically created note by IMED, and there it is. So the first thing, see, and it's the signature is not required. This thing is automatically filed by a pseudo IMED user. So the first thing the practitioner would do is they would right-click, and then they would identify additional signers. In this case, we're going to type in Paul Carmen, who is the VA witness that was on the telephone. We'll add him and say, okay, so Paul would get an alert when he logs into CPRS. He would double-click on that alert. It would take him right to this note. And then all Paul has to do is right-click, make an addendum. As the VA employee who witnessed this consent via telephone, he would type in something to this effect. And then all he has to do is right-click and sign that note, enter his electronic signature, and that's it. Any additional questions may be directed to your clinical supervisor. Also, Dr. Thomas Hartney can be contacted as he assisted in developing this instructional presentation. Thanks and have a total VA day. Bye-bye.